welcome to the deep dive. I want you to just picture something for a second.
Okay.
You are sitting in the cab of a beat-up, heavy-duty truck. The heat is absolutely suffocating,
Oh, I can imagine.
and you're staring down 300 miles of unpaved, deeply rutted dirt roads up in the mountains.
Right.
And in the back of your truck, sloshing around with every single bump, are hundreds of gallons of highly unstable nitroglycerin.
That is just, yeah, that's the ultimate pressure cooker.
It really is. If you hit a pothole too hard or if you brake too suddenly...
So the engine vibrates at just the wrong frequency.
Exactly. You and the truck vaporize instantly. There won't even be enough left of you to bury.
Just listening to that setup makes your muscles tense up.
Right. And that is the exact premise of the masterpiece we're unpacking today. Henri-Georges Clouzot's 1953 thriller, The Wages of Fear.
A phenomenal film.
It really is. We've pulled together an incredible stack of material to really get inside the machinery of this film today. We're drawing from deep dive essays from the Criterion Collection, some archival context from the British Film Institute, a really brilliant retrospective review by Roger Ebert, some sharp analysis of French thriller cinema from Sight and Sound, and of course, general production details from Wikipedia and IMDb.
It's a fascinating stack of sources because, well, The Wages of Fear is one of those rare films that operates flawlessly as a white-knuckle thriller, but beneath the hood, it's actually this profound philosophical text.
Yeah?
It's been dissected for over 70 years by film historians, philosophers, directors.
And because it is so highly regarded, I think we should establish some ground rules for today's deep dive right up front.
Good idea.
If you haven't seen the film, your secrets are safe with us. We are absolutely not revealing the ending.
No spoilers here.
And we aren't going to just read you a beat-by-beat plot summary either,
Yeah.
or try to dramatize it. What we're doing today is looking at how this film works.
Right, the mechanics of it.
Exactly. We're going to examine the mechanics of suspense, the reality of human desperation, and what happens to the human mind specifically, the performance of masculinity under prolonged, inescapable fear.
But before we get into the trucks and the explosives, we really need to set the stage.
We do.
Because the world this film was born into is absolutely crucial to understanding its DNA. We're talking about 1953, post-war Europe.
Yeah, you really can't separate The Wages of Fear from the shadow of the Second World War. By 1953, the act of fighting is over, but the psychological and economic devastation is still the defining reality of everyday life.
Entire cities are still rubble.
You have a continent that is economically shattered. And out of that collective trauma, you see a massive philosophical shift, particularly in French art and literature.
This is the era that really cements existentialism in the cultural consciousness.
And existentialism, at its most basic level, is the idea that the universe doesn't inherently care about you.
Right.
There's no guaranteed safety net, no predetermined meaning.
Precisely. It strips away all those comforting illusions. You are placed in an indifferent, sometimes absurd universe, and you're defined entirely by the choices you make, usually when you're backed into a corner.
Yeah.
The BFI archives and the Criterion essays we looked at point out how Clouzot channels this post-war exhaustion directly into his cinema.
He's not just making a scary movie.
Not at all. When he makes this film, he isn't just trying to make an audience jump. He's reflecting a world that is deeply tired, morally ambiguous, and just obsessed with the sheer grueling mechanics of survival.
And that concept of survival brings us directly to the first major theme our sources focus on, the economics of desperation.
Yes.
Because the characters in this film aren't your typical swashbuckling Hollywood heroes looking to save the day. They don't take on this suicidal drive for glory.
No, they do it because of the setting they are trapped in.
Exactly. The film takes place in Las Piedras, which is this squalid, remote town in South America. And the sources highlight how the entire premise is driven by the, quote, power structures in colonial economies.
Las Piedras is essentially a prison without walls. And the warden of this prison is the Southern Oil Company, or SOC.
Right.
This is an American corporate entity that effectively owns the region. They control all the wealth, the infrastructure, the airstrip, everything.
And the local population, along with this motley crew of displaced European expats who ended up there after the war, they're entirely at the mercy of this company.
There are no jobs. There is no way to earn the money required to buy a plane ticket out.
It's absolute crushing poverty.
Yeah.
The film spends a massive amount of time early on just showing you the dirt, the heat, the flies, and the suffocating boredom of men who have absolutely nothing to do and nowhere to go.
Just waiting.
Just waiting. And then an oil well explodes 300 miles away. The company needs to blow it out with nitroglycerin, but they don't have specialized shock-proof trucks to transport it
So what does the oil company executive do? He decides to hire the desperate men in the town.
because they're completely expendable.
Exactly. If they blow up on the road, the company doesn't have to deal with a union or pay out life insurance. They just hire the next desperate guy.
The company offers $2,000 to each driver who makes it. Today, that might not sound like a fortune, but in the context of Las Piedras in 1953,
$2,000 is a ticket out of hell.
it's the ultimate golden ticket. And what struck me so deeply when reading through the retrospective reviews is how calmly the film observes this transaction.
It doesn't preach.
It doesn't preach to the audience at all. It doesn't put on a dramatic score and call the oil company evil, and it doesn't call the men brave heroes. It is purely observational.
These men are agreeing to trade the very high likelihood of their own sudden death for the slim chance of financial liberation.
And that is a fascinating question for you, the listener, to mull over. How much does sheer economic survival dictate human behavior?
Right. When you systematically remove a person's options, one by one, until only the most extreme choice remains, what kinds of risks become entirely acceptable?
The deep dive into these essays reveals that Clouseau avoids moral conclusions completely. He doesn't ask us to judge whether these men are greedy or courageous.
He simply presents a very clinical, stark reality. When you are crushed by systemic poverty and you are offered a way out, you will drive a bomb over a mountain.
It's chilling. It reminds me of being trapped in a burning building. You don't jump out of a fourth-story window because you're brave. You jump because the fire is right behind you.
It's an illusion of choice.
And that claustrophobic feeling, that feeling of the walls closing in, is what the director, Henri-Georges Clouzot, is an absolute master of creating. Both the sight and sound piece and Roger Ebert's retrospective spend a lot of time analyzing Clouzot's profound influence on the thriller genre.
He is frequently compared to Hitchcock, but his approach is distinct.
Very distinct.
Clouzot doesn't rely on cheap momentary shocks. You aren't going to get jump scares here. Instead, he builds what the sight and sound analysis so brilliantly terms suspense as emotional architecture.
Suspense as emotional architecture. I love that phrasing. It implies that the fear in this film is a physical structure you are forced to walk through, and the doors are locking behind you as you go.
That's a great way to put it.
So how does he build that architecture? Because reading about the specific cinematic techniques he uses makes you realize how meticulously this film is constructed.
Well, it starts with the pacing. Modern audiences are used to films hitting the ground running, but the pacing here is agonizingly deliberate.
Yeah, Clouzot spends the first hour of the film just establishing the squalor, the heat, and the hopelessness of Las Piedras.
He forces you to sit in the anticipation. You know the trucks are coming. You know the nitroglycerin is coming. By the time the engines actually turn over, the tension is already suffocating because you understand exactly how high the stakes are for these specific men.
And once they are on the road, Clouzot introduces the next building block of this architecture, environmental tension.
The world itself becomes a weapon.
Exactly. In a normal movie, a boulder in the road or a muddy patch or a bump is just scenery. Here, because of the cargo, a bump is a death sentence. There's this one sequence that Ebert points out that is just legendary, the washboard road.
Oh, the Tol Ondulé, yes.
Right, it's this stretch of dirt road that has formed these deep corrugated ripples. If they drive over it at a normal speed, the truck will vibrate so violently that the nitroglycerin will instantly detonate.
The only way to smooth out the suspension and glide over the ripples is to drive fast.
They have to hit 40 miles an hour on a mountain dirt road, completely blind to what might be around the next bend.
It is a terrifying paradox. To survive the bumps, they have to speed up.
And Clouzot forces you into the cab with them during that sequence. You feel every single jolt.
Then there is the famous backing up sequence. The road winds up a mountain, and there is a hairpin turn so tight that the trucks can't make it. The only way to negotiate the turn is to back the truck onto a rotting wooden platform suspended out over a massive gorge.
Just reading the description of that scene in the BFI archives makes my palms sweat. They were backing a truck full of explosives onto splintering wood over a cliff.
And here is where Clouzot's next tool comes into play. Minimalist dialogue.
Yeah, in a modern blockbuster, the characters would be screaming at each other, or someone would crack a joke to relieve the tension for the audience.
Clouzot denies you that comfort. He strips away the talking almost entirely during the suspense sequences.
which forces your attention entirely onto the action and the consequence.
Oh.
You are trapped in the silence with these men.
And when you remove the dialogue, you make room for the final, perhaps most oppressive tool, the sound design.
The auditory experience of The Wages of Fear is arguably more terrifying than the visual one.
Because every sound is magnified.
When you know that vibration equals death, the groan of the truck's chassis isn't just background noise. The crunch of gravel under the tires, the whining of the engine as it struggles up a hill, the creak of that rotting wooden platform.
And beneath it all, the sickening sound of the liquid nitroglycerin sloshing back and forth in its containers.
It's awful. The sound design is essentially the vocabulary of their impending doom.
So when you stack all of these elements, the grueling pacing, the weaponized physical environment, the oppressive silence, and the terrifying sound design, you get something that goes way beyond excitement.
You get fear as a tool for psychological transformation.
Clouseau isn't just making you nervous, he is systematically breaking down the minds of the characters on screen, and by extension, the mind of the viewer. It ceases to be a question of physical survival and becomes a question of psychological endurance.
And that brings us to the human element at the very center of this trap Clouseau has built. When a human mind is subjected to that level of sustained, inescapable terror, all the social masks we wear begin to slip.
And the primary mask being examined in this film is masculinity.
This is where the film's existential roots really show themselves. Think about the archetypal 1950s cinematic hero, the stoic, hardened, tough guy who stares danger in the face with a cynical smirk.
Clouseau sets up his four drivers, particularly the characters of Mario and Joe, to look exactly like that archetype. They are rough, they spit, they posture, they project this aura of absolute hardened bravado in the town.
Joe especially. He comes into town dressed like an aging gangster, acting like he owns the place, intimidating the younger guys. He is the ultimate performance of traditional masculinity.
But once they are in the truck and the miles start ticking by and the reality of the nitroglycerin sets in, Clouseau meticulously, almost ruthlessly, strips all of that bravado away.
Because the nitroglycerin doesn't care how tough you are. A rock in the road doesn't care about your swagger.
The Criterion essays dive deep into this breakdown. Existentialism posits that these societal roles are constructs. They are performances we put on when life is relatively safe and predictable. But when you are faced with imminent, prolonged annihilation, the performance collapses.
And we watch Joe completely fall apart.
Yeah.
The hardened gangster becomes paralyzed with terror. He's physically sick. He wants to quit. He loses all his nerve.
Meanwhile, Mario, the younger, seemingly less hardened guy, becomes completely hardened and ruthless in his singular drive to finish the job and get the money.
The film exposes this deep, raw vulnerability beneath their tough exteriors. And it does so without mocking them. It's just observing the fundamental truth of human frailty. When the pressure is that high, the facade burns away.
Which naturally leads to a really profound exploration of survival ethics and human dignity. If your only biological imperative is to exist for one more minute, one more second, what happens to your dignity? Does it even hold any value?
There is a sequence in the latter half of the film that illustrates this perfectly. I won't spoil how it ends, but it involves a broken pipeline that has flooded a massive crater in the road with thick crude oil.
Oh, that scene.
The truck has to get through this literal lake of oil, but there are branches and debris hidden beneath the surface. One of the men has to physically wade into this chest-deep pit of suffocating toxic sludge to clear the path for the truck.
It is a horrific sequence. It is the visual embodiment of losing one's dignity. The man in the oil is reduced to a creature, completely coated in black slime, struggling just to breathe, while the massive, indifferent machine of the truck bears down on him.
It's primal. And what we see in that scene and throughout the drive is the total evaporation of the social contract. Friendships, loyalty, polite behavior, all of it is sacrificed on the altar of sheer survival.
And again, just as the film observes the economic desperation without judgment, it observes this moral decay without lecturing you.
It doesn't preach that maintaining your dignity is noble, and it doesn't say that sacrificing it to live is shameful. It just watches the decay happen.
I think that is why the film remains so deeply unsettling to modern audiences. We are used to films telling us how to feel. We want the movie to reward the good guys and punish the bad guys. Clouseau refuses to do that.
He simply shows you that underneath our civilized veneer, we are biological organisms desperate to survive, and we will do unimaginable things to ensure that survival.
I want you to think about that for a second. Think about your life right now. Think about the safety nets you have, the unspoken rules of polite society you follow, the image of yourself that you project to your friends and coworkers.
What happens to all of that if every single comfort is suddenly gone? What happens to your dignity when you are reduced purely to a state of biological survival